Welcome, citizens. Today is the 30th anniversary since the referendum of Croatia to become independent and split from Yugoslavia. What is interesting about this referendum and this opt-in for independence is that it is the largest win of a referendum to date. Because for the questions asked for the soon-to-be independent Croatians about supporting the sovereignty of the new independent Croatia, the yay, won by a whopping 93.24% in favor, which is very large. So today, that is what we are celebrating. Now, unfortunately, for everyone involved in this game, Blizzard is not going to offer us a referendum telling us when do we want the patch to be released. To this day, there is still no real signal, no real proof that this patch even exists. We don't know when it's going to come out. However, we have to talk about a few things today. A couple of things are going to be additions or modifications to the game. One related to the Solash that you're going to be earning that has gotten increased as promised, and the other one being the Mythic Plus cheat code known as the Cardboard Assassin getting nerfed in 9.1. But before that, I wanted to take stock of 9.1 because Eisen, my lord, my liege, you have been playing in the PTR for a while now. You have tested a few things and checked out how the patch is looking, and it's looking fine, it's looking okay. There are some things we will consider later, but there are a couple of issues with this patch. The first one, the big one, which is going kind of under the radar so far, is the seasonal affix for Mythic Plus. Now, do you know which seasonal affix is gonna come out in 9.1? That's right, you're not crazy, there isn't one yet. We don't know which affix is going to be. And that is a problem. The reason why I think this is a problem is because the main key, the main crucial affix for Mythic Plus can change shape and shift the meta. Prideful was, of course, very single target centric, and more importantly, it was very burst centric. It wasn't important in the burst because you wanted to kill the Prideful quickly. It was more important because of the amount of extra damage it could give you once you got the buff, as well as, of course, the important given to single target because you wanted to take it down rather quickly, as well as the fact that the Prideful buff was very good for bosses, effectively making dealing with bosses easier. The reason why I think the lack of a crucial affix is a problem is because this can help you decide what to play in 9.1. I have made quite a few videos, right, in preparation for 9.1, trying to give you a decent outlook as we progress towards the release of 9.1, the alleged 9.1, as we don't have confirmation of its existence yet. But these things, like the speed of the spec, the fun level of the spec, or which specs are looking powerful right now, can change quite a bit based on the type of affix you have in Mythic Plus, which you don't know about. It's pretty weird when you think about it. Just the other week, May the 13th, I think it was, we started getting even Mythic testing, Mythic raid testing in the PTR. We have now gone through the testing of basically almost all of the bosses in Sanctum of Domination. They have moved into heroic testing, and now, as I mentioned, they have moved into mythic. We have gotten the first look already of the new mega dungeon Tazavesh as well. We have seen the extra layers of Torghast with the new system of Torghast being tested. The adamant vaults has been added in and is being tested as well. Blizzard has started to push out the Covenant-specific legendaries as well. We are now currently testing the quests for the campaign, you know, the new bits and pieces for the campaign, the storyline, as well as Korthia being tested. So almost everything is here. Almost everything being added in 9.1 being here, yet the only thing that's missing is the seasonal affix that we don't know about. It's annoying because maybe right now you're thinking about rerolling, maybe right now you're thinking about respecking, maybe you want to know which spec is going to be good in Mythic Plus because you want to focus in Mythic Plus. And right now it is really hard to gauge without knowing the affix. For more fun theory crafting, you know, for more feely crafting and for more entertaining guessing games, it would be nice to actually get this seasonal affix properly introduced into the game so we can actually see what we are supposed to do with it. And no, not really. What we have gotten so far doesn't really cut it. We have gotten the, I guess, temporary possible name of the affix, which is Domination, and the description from Blizzard, which was defeat the jailer's forces to gain cool powers. This was 20 days ago. And in 20 days, we have gotten no implementation yet. And of course, we have gotten no confirmation on whether or not this would have been somewhat similar to anima powers from Torghast being put into Mythic Plus and stuff like that. This was all conjecture. We are still no closer to the truth than we were 20 days ago. That is bumming me out. It's the main thing, really, that is annoying me about this patch. This seems like a pretty good patch, honestly. We are getting the new zone, the new raid, and the mega dungeon. There are plenty of things, this is easy to mistake, but there are plenty of things that you might have found annoying at the release of Shadowlands, which are getting repeated or revamped in 9.1, which will not annoy you as much. Take Cortia, for example. Yes, it's another Mo zone. Yes, there is more grinding to do. However, the zone is smaller. There are way less elites, enemies, and this time you have actual roads that are pretty much empty of enemies that allow you to run whenever you want. There is not going to be an Eye of the Jailer capping you and your stay, and you're also going to start your experience with a mount from the get-go, so you will not have to do that dreadful first few weeks where you have to run. You're not going to have to go through this few weeks of anima starvation like you had in the first few weeks of Shadowlands, because it's not really that relevant anymore. Soulbinds. You're starting 9.1 with all of the soulbinds unlocked. You already have all 3. You can already change your spec, your build, and apply them to different soulbinds. You don't have to wait weeks, if not months, for the correct soulbind. Yes, in 9.1 the soulbind will extend by 3 tiers, but that's very minor compared to most of the 3 that you already have unlocked. What about legendaries? Unlike the release, you don't have to wait to catch them all. You don't have to wait or store your soul ash because you have to focus on a single one. You have been able to stockpile the soul ash, craft multiple legendaries. You're not in a situation like us elemental shamans having to wait for a month before your best in slot legendary is available from the rotating world boss. That's gonna be already done. That's not gonna be a problem anymore. So there are plenty of things that are smoothing the release of 9.1. If you're trying to look at all these things that you might have found annoying and just compare them to your experience at the release of Shadowlands, many of these things are going to be made less annoying than before. Now, for the other thing that I have found not annoying but disappointing is crafting. So I don't like the fact that Blizzard put as the only new thing for crafting the legendary recipe, the legendary blank pattern. Because, you know, in Legion and more importantly in BFA, we have gone through crafting, and crafting professions were given a very powerful item they could craft. Bind on pickup, essentially for professions only, that could be comparable to Mythic raiding quality gear. It had a guaranteed socket, so that's what made it very good. You could go, for example, something like jewel crafting and get your shiny crafted ring with good stats and a socket. And that was very, very powerful. In some cases, it actually was the best in slot for your entire tier, that ring, if the loot table of the entire expansion didn't happen to have matching secondary stats. The crafting was gated, right? You had the profession quest that usually sent you in the raid to collect some quest materials, and once you completed the raid a certain amount of times, killed a certain amount of bosses, you could upgrade the item level until you got the almost mythic raid quality. I don't like how this was removed in favor of legendaries, because legendaries at this point do not feel like an extra, do not feel like a special thing. Sometimes you see someone with a crafted piece, sometimes you see someone who has herbalism and mining and no crafted items. In Shadowlands you're trolling if you don't have a legendary. You know, it's a must-have, it's a mandatory piece of your gear. So crafting doesn't even feel like a bonus, doesn't even feel like a nice little extra, which is what I think is disappointing about crafting in Shadowlands. You are just giving it for granted that you have to craft the base version for your legendary piece. Not only that, but for some reason, alchemists have gotten screwed. Because before, you could get your high item level alchemy trinket. In Shadowlands, that was removed in favor of legendary patterns, except you can't have a legendary trinket. So alchemists were basically left with nothing, which is also kind of annoying. Especially because they used to be very good mana-wise for healers, and now that's just not worth. So I'm pretty triggered about that. I hoped Blizzard would have implemented something new for professions in 9.1, right? After you get the whole thing about crafting legendaries in 9.0, it's like, okay, but now in 9.1 we need something new, we need something cooler for professions, and we are not really getting it, at the very least for now. Now, on to the actual news of the day, the actual couple of things that have been added recently. This is something that came through in the interview by one of the game developers, Morgan Day, when he had the interview with Sloot, and he pointed out that Soul Ash was about to be increased by quite a bit in the PTR for what you're going to be going to earn in Torghast. As you know, we already pointed out that in 9.1 you will be using Soul Cinders to upgrade your legendary to rank 5 and 6, which are respectively the item level 250 and 260 ranks of your legendary. So because we are going to have a new currency that is going to become the thing to keep track of in 9.1, the old currency, which is Soul Ash, is going to get its own shiny catch-up mechanism. And now we have gotten the implementation of this catch-up mechanism, because the Soul Ash earnings have been heavily increased, in fact, more or less doubled by almost 85% compared to your previous layer 8, the one that you're completing right now, becoming effectively doubled when you're completing a layer 12, which is going to be the new maximum in 9.1. The TLDR of the whole thing is that instead of earning 1040 Soul Ash every week, because you're earning 570 Soul Ash per wing, you're going to be earning 1040 per wing, totaling 2080, so twice as much. This, coupled with the fact that in 9.1 you will be able to transfer Soul Ash to other characters part of your account, it means that, for example, with just 3 different characters, you're able to earn over 6,200 Soul Ash per week. You know, that's more than enough to get you your single legendary at rank 4 in a single week, even more so if you have more characters to play. And it's of course very malleable, very versatile, because you can still decide which of your characters you want to have the legendary on, because you can send Soul Ash to other characters. Of course, this is not relevant for the new one, for the Soul Cinders, which are still going to be pretty tightly related to a single character, but that is to be expected. It's the new shiny mechanic, is the new activity being added in 9.1, so it's going to be a little bit of a grind, of a slog for the first few weeks. Eventually, Blizzard will add its own catch-up mechanisms. I'm going to guess somewhere in like December or something like that. Now, this doesn't actually change anything when it comes to what do you have to do every week, what do you have to do every day, or what not in 9.1. There is not going to be any time you have to spend extra because of this, or less because of this. You are going to clear your 2 wings of Torghast every week for Soul Cinders, and the Soul Ash is just what you were getting in the background, basically for free. So now you're just getting more of it. You're just getting some extra. Then again, it is also worth mentioning that if you have been playing since the release of Shadowlands, you are probably already stockpiling quite a few different rank 4 legendaries. So the amount of people who will end up still needing extra Soul Ash on their main character are very few. You know, some very undecided people who keep hopping between specs. Maybe a druid in all its 4 specs still has a bunch of legendaries it wants to craft. Maybe some of the specs that will change the priority in 9.1, like a Fire Mage becoming weaker in favor of a Frost Mage, or maybe something like an Affliction Warlock switching to Destruction so he has new legendaries to craft, right? Otherwise, this is mostly still for alts, for new characters that want to get up to their rank 4 legendary very quickly. Besides this, there is not really going to be much of any change for your character. Now, one change that might affect your character is something that has existed for quite a long time, and very surprisingly, Blizzard did not touch it for a long time, which is the Cataclysm's Cardboard Assassin. Now, if you might wonder what I'm talking about, the Cardboard Assassin is a pretty old engineering enchant on your belt. And what it did is exactly as it sounds. It is going to allow you to spawn a Cardboard Assassin that is going to pulse an AoE taunt, taunting all enemies nearby. The reason why this was so useful, of course, is that it had just enough HP to essentially warrant taking the aggro off your tank and essentially saving you from some pretty mean and nasty abilities, maybe saving you from things like necrotic stacks, etc, etc. What was also very powerful is the fact that this was engineering. It wasn't coming from a spec of any kind, which meant that technically, you could have 5 players as engineers and 5 players with their belt enchant being a Cardboard Assassin, and essentially be able in a Mythic Plus key to cycle 5 different Cardboard Assassins, basically 1 per minute. It is so necessary that even Blizzard itself is actually putting this in the vendor of tournament realms so that tanks and other players can actually buy this in the tournament realm to use it in Mythic Plus. That's how integral it was to the whole high-end meta of Mythic Plus. Well, not as much anymore because it's been nerfed. In 9.1, the level is going down from level 60 to level 35, and the HP went down by almost 5 times. It went down to having only 2000 HP, so basically dying almost immediately. It will still be able to send off the first round, the first AoE taunt on all the enemies, but then it's gonna die so quickly that very likely not much of any damage is going to be prevented. You can still probably use this to cheese when you're fighting against a single mob, right? For a single big hit. If the mob is tauntable, you can still use the cardboard assassin to force it to hit a different target other than the tank, but besides that, it's not gonna have the same power that it has had for this first tier, this first season of Mythic Plus. Now, it's not that tanks are getting anything in return. I've read some comments and, you know, the buffs given to tanks have already taken place. The 10% extra physical damage and magical damage reduction given to all tanks, except for Vengeance Demon Hunter, who got one a little bit smaller. It went live in 9.0.5 weeks ago, so it's not that you're losing this as a tank while gaining some more power. So we will see exactly how much it is going to change for tanks. But then again, to be honest, I don't even know how many people were actually paying attention to this or bothering to use this. This was a very high-end type of trick you could use in Mythic Plus, and also required quite a bit of coordination if you wanted to use this thing with multiple players in the same party. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this barely affects 5% of the player base playing Mythic Plus at best. The only thing that does for me is to make me even more annoyed at trees or balance druids, because Mythic Plus has gotten to the point where high-end progression for keys makes it almost mandatory to have a balanced druid, not even because of the damage, not even because of all the other utility they can bring, but just because of cheating the tank damage with trees. So yeah, unironically, I would like to see them removed. But besides this, there is a consideration to make for the day. Eisen, sir, my lord, my liege, you have been playing and seeing what's up in the PTR for quite a while now. What has disappointed you? Are you feeling like something is missing, or did you wish something else was in there, that Blizzard could have added something else for 9.1? Beyond this, I am pretty satisfied with this 9.1 patch. I have heard people and I have read people. I know, this is the lowest hanging fruit. I know I'm cheating, you know, when you go and read Wowhead comments or WoW official forums comments, you're basically just asking to get your IQ points stolen, but still, you see complaints and critiques every single time, even in this piece of news for today, even pointing out that Blizzard is doubling your Soul Ash. People are still complaining because apparently 9.1 has nothing to do. People have suddenly decided that in World of Warcraft, the endgame content being the raid and even Mythic Plus is no longer enough. Even though we went from Classic all the way up to BLOZZORD Draenor, where the only endgame content was a single raid every few months, and everyone was happy with that, nobody had problems with that, people weren't complaining, the content was empty. We have went from Legion to now Shadowlands, where not only you have the raid, but you even have Mythic Plus, and extra activities that Blizzard has tried to put in, from the Mage Tower Challenge to the Withered training scenario to the Island Expeditions and Warfronts, which, I know, fine, let's just not count them. And now Torghast, and then people are still complaining about the lack of content. Personally, I do think the patch is just fine. It is one of the bigger patches we have seen to date, because there is a new zone, plus the new Mega Dungeon all at once, plus the new raid. For example, the first patch of Legion had Karazhan, which was the Mega Dungeon, and had End Trial of Valor, which was a mini raid, and it didn't have a new zone. The first patch of BFA, the patch that introduced the Battle of the Zaralor raid, it just had the big raid. Technically also Crucible of Storms, but no Mega Dungeon and no new zone. This one is a pretty big patch. You have some extra additions making things a little bit smoother and a little bit easier. For example, in Korthia, the new zone in the Maw, you can start already with the mount, so it's gonna be faster, it's gonna be easier and smoother, it's not gonna be as cancerous as the first few weeks in the Maw. With the start of the new raid, everyone will already have its own legendaries. It's not gonna be just as annoying as when Castle Nathria released. Even with the new legendaries being introduced in 9.1, you will immediately have enough Soul Ash stockpiled to instantly craft a rank 4 legendary for you ready to go. My only major pet peeve, as I mentioned, is the lack of the announced seasonal affix for Mythic Plus, but beyond that, I am pretty positive about the patch so far. And with this, we can stop, we can close this video. Everything that needed to be said has been said. Now I have to go. Now that the quarantine has been lifted, I've got a Taylor Swift concert to go to. So thank you for watching the video. Our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, said only good people will subscribe to this channel and like this video, whereas Satan, the devil himself, said no, bad people will dislike and keep playing Havoc Demon Hunter. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, no, but for real though, it's pretty weird that we still don't have a seasonal affix.